start tonight at 5 o'clock with another incident and a disturbing trend in our community. Right now, there is a man who's in critical condition at a hospital here in Indianapolis. Police tell us the car hit him early this morning at Shelby and Raymond Streets.
And it's not the first pedestrian crash at that intersection. Our Ashton Hackman spent the day talking with traffic safety advocates about the area.
Police lights filled the Monday morning sky at Raymond and Shelby Streets. Officers responded to the intersection just before 6.
Metro Police tell us the driver in this crash drove several blocks away from the scene before returning and is cooperating with police. But unfortunately, not many cases involving pedestrians have had similar outcomes.
Of the more than 600 crashes involving pedestrians this year, nearly half were hit and runs. 10 of those crashes were fatal, and they happened on all sides of town. IMPD records show officers found and arrested drivers in at least 2 of the incidents. Eric Holt with Safe Streets Indy is tracking the numbers.
A lot of these incidents do happen, after dark in places where the lighting isn't super great. And so that definitely plays a contributing factor in a lot of these, unfortunately.
Safe Streets Indy calls the Raymond and Shelby Street intersection one of the city's pedestrian crash hotspots. 5 crashes this year and 5 the year before. In February, Dylan Rogers lost his life here after he was hit by a car.
Everybody plays a part in, making sure our roads are safe, and that goes for pedestrians, bicyclists, but also drivers too. So everybody really should be on the lookout for everyone else.
Holt says the city can do more to improve the intersection, but drivers and pedestrians involved in crashes have a responsibility to stay on scene.
Stopping and doing the right thing and making sure that the person gets the care that they need is vitally important.
In Indianapolis, Ashton Hackman, 13 News.
Now, we reached out to Councilor Frank Muscaria, who represents the district where the Raymond-Shelby intersection is, to ask about what changes he thinks should be made at the intersection. We will let you know if we get a response.
Today, a Whiteland teen accused of attacking and raping an elderly woman faced a judge. Ariane Smith was arrested last week after police say that he raped a 79-year-old woman at her home as she was bringing in her groceries. Officers then say that 16-year-old then went on to attempt to steal a vape pen at a gas station nearby along US 31. After that incident, he was arrested a short time later. The judge moved him from a juvenile facility to an adult jail, and that where he now is held without bond. President Donald Trump now traveling on his way back to the White House after a whirlwind trip to the Middle East.
The president first went to Israel as the last living hostages held by Hamas were released. Mr. Trump then traveled to Egypt to sign the peace agreement, which has brought an end to hostilities in the 2-year war between Israel and Hamas.
And while the prospect for peace does look promising, there are still so many issues in this deal that still do need to be worked out. Julie Sirkin with NBC brings us up to date.
In Israel, cheers and tears as 20 living Israeli hostages held for 738 days returned home in emotional reunions with their families. Freed from Hamas captivity after Israel and Hamas agreed to key elements of President Trump's peace plan. Flanked by leaders from around the world, the president officially signing the deal in Egypt, where negotiators reached the historic agreement late last week.
This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for.
It brought an end to more than 2 years of fighting. For now, a ceasefire, the first phase in a 20-point plan toward a lasting peace. Since hostilities ended, thousands of Palestinians have made the trek back to northern Gaza, and hundreds of aid trucks have begun pouring into the devastated region, carrying much-needed food and medical supplies.
The hostages are back. The hostages are back.
The president starting his whirlwind day in Israel, where he addressed the country's parliament just hours after the hostages were released.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
But many questions remain, and many details still need to be worked out. Will Hamas disarm and cede power? Who will govern Gaza? And will the ceasefire hold? President Trump believes it will.
This took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it? And it's going to hold up, too.
As part of the agreement, Israel also handing over hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and people detained during the war. And in Israel, while today is all about celebrating the living hostages that have been returned to their families, Hamas is also expected, as part of this deal, to turn over the bodies of 28 hostages that have either been killed by Hamas in captivity or died while being held there. Many families still waiting as search operations are ongoing in Gaza for those bodies. In Washington, Julie Sirkin, NBC News.
Here in Indianapolis, the Jewish community is celebrating the release of hostages.
But one community group tells our Jenna Webster they cannot forget what has changed there the last 2 years.
At the Jewish Community Center, the Israeli flag raised high. The Star of David, hard to miss.
Staying up last night, watching the hostage release, waking up this morning, reading what happened while, in the interim was really pretty amazing.
Mark Swatez is the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis. He says it was hard to sleep in anticipation of this moment.
It was just a time of pure, unexadulterated joy. But at the same time, when we're standing here now, this is really mixed, it's really tinged with a lot of really difficult emotions. I mean, we have 20 alive hostages came home, thank God, and that's an amazing thing. But so many of the hostages now are coming home who are no longer alive.
While people celebrate in Hostage Square halfway around the world, Swatez says it's just as personal here in Indianapolis. And it's hard for him to forget what's changed.
Anti-Semitism has gone up over 500% as a result of this war, and I don't see that really going down. So what is the new rhetoric going to be, and how do we meet that rhetoric? That's sort of what we're thinking about now. How do we move forward from this event, both with the good and with the bad?
Moving forward also means an eye to the Trump administration's 20-point peace plan.
And real peace in the Middle East is something for which we can all pray.
I also talked briefly with Eitan Goldstein, a North Central High School grad. He's lived in Israel about 12 years now. He was about to enter a synagogue, so couldn't do a full interview with me. But he says everyone in Israel is ecstatic. Goldstein says it's as if a dark cloud has been lifted off the country. People on the streets are smiling and happy, and there's a general feeling of lightness and relief. He goes on to thank the Trump administration and says he's feeling cautiously optimistic about the future of the peace plan. In Indianapolis, Jenna Webster, 13 News.
And there's going to be an event Thursday night at the JCC to commemorate the end of the war. They say it's focused on remembrance, resilience, and healing.
5:07, and Rob is in for Angela tonight. We're in the low 70s, and it's really unseasonably warm for this time of year. I mean, we're on the 13th of October already.
Yes, we are. Blue skies, some clouds, and more have been pushing in over the last few hours.
Yeah, that's really about the most interesting part of the forecast is that we finally saw some clouds today after we had a lot of blue sky over the weekend. Temperatures in the 70s. It should be in the mid to upper 60s. 67 is our average high this time of year. So we really are talking about much above average temperatures. Those temperatures are going to continue to slide over the next several days, at least the normals, but the actual temperatures, they're going to be going up. So we're supposed to be getting cooler and cooler each day as we get through October. There are the clouds that Felicia was mentioning as they rolled in today, and some of those are going to be fizzling out as we get into the evening, the atmosphere calming down a bit. We're expecting partly cloudy to mostly clear skies for tonight. But as I mentioned, this is about as interesting as it gets because our forecast is really just a numbers game, getting the temperatures to cool down a bit. Mid-70s currently. That means we've got a long way to drop to get into the 50s, which is where we expect to end up for tonight. We'll put 74 there for the current temperature, but through this evening, very pleasant. The atmosphere is relatively dry, so there's not much in the way of any humidity. We'll be in the 60s by around midnight and then heading into the 50s. I think tonight's going to be just a little bit milder than where we were early this morning. Our low temperature this morning was 49. We'll do about 5 degrees above that at 55, although outlying locations may be able to sneak into the upper 40s briefly in a few spots, but probably more 50s than 40s for tonight. Tomorrow we go even warmer, even though the average temperatures this time of year continue to cool down as we get closer and closer to winter. Tuesday's forecast did not get that memo. It's up to 78 expected for tomorrow. There is a cold front on the way, but will it bring us a chance for rain? I'll show you coming up in just a few.